Welcome to Faith Positive Radio with Dr. Joey Fawcett, the Christian business coaching conversation that increases your faith with greater joy at work so you love God and others more. Dr. Joey interviews Christian business professionals just like you to discover their secrets for working faith positive in a negative world. Welcome to Faith Positive Radio with Dr. Joey Fawcett.
Hey, Faith Positive Nation, one of the 3 subjects that you're never supposed to discuss with somebody when you first meet them, right? What are they? Right? Religion. Mm-hmm. We do that, though, because we're Faith Positive Nation, right? With Christ in us, we're sharing that. Secondly, it has something to do with sexuality. The third question you never talk about, right, is what? Money. That's exactly right. We're going to talk about money today, and it's how you as a Christian can be wise with your money. I pray that prayer every morning. Lord, help me be wise like Solomon. And I figure if it worked for him, it'll work for me, right? And he was also the richest ruler ever of Israel. So there must be something to wisdom. Jennifer Yankowsky is here to help us today. She's a financial advisor, and she's here to help us be wise with our money. And I met Jennifer, and she's on this program because of our amazing regional leader in Faith Positive Atlanta and that region, Perry Rue. So Perry, thanks for introducing us to Jennifer Yankowsky. Jennifer, welcome to Faith Positive Nation.
Thank you, Dr. Joey. Glad to be here.
Absolutely delighted to have you because money, money, money. Everybody talks about money, right? Well, kind of, but not really, because it's one of those intimate subjects, as I said a moment ago, that we're not too sure about. So as a financial advisor who helps Christians be wise with their money, what does your typical day look like?
There's no such thing as a typical day.
So your typical day is an atypical day, right?
Yes, it is. Sometimes that is, the typical phone calls and email, that type of thing. But a lot of what I really enjoy and where I spend a lot of time is meeting face-to-face with clients and really understanding what are their goals, what are their dreams, and how do I help them accomplish that.
Yeah. So you help them put together a wise plan for accomplishing their goals. How do you get people to talk about their dreams? Because, sometimes as Christians, we have some problems talking about money. There's certain myths, I think, that some Christians hold around money that simply aren't true, in my opinion. But how do you get Christians to talk about money?
Good question. Everybody comes to the conversation with their own preconceived notions, their own perspective based on what their parents have taught them, what they've heard at church. So that first conversation when I meet someone and talk about money is really just kind of breaking through those barriers, breaking down whatever they're bringing into the conversation and letting them know I'm not here to judge any of that. It's just really a place for us to have a conversation. And so some people open up a lot easier than others do. Some are a lot more reserved. And the conversation moves at the pace that's comfortable for them.
Yeah. So what are some of those barriers that Christians particularly bring to the table about money?
Well, I was just discussing this last night with someone. I've had 2 different conversations as it relates to those who have accumulated well and those who have not. And those who have, to some degree, will almost apologize for that. And then people will apologize on the other side of, we should be farther along at this stage in our lives, or we haven't made the best choices. And so people come in almost apologetic and ashamed, or, we've taken on all this debt, or kind of whatever those things are that are burdening them. And I try to help them see that we're starting where you are. Yes, that's in the past, and we need to talk about that to catch us up on where you are now. I mean, that's an important conversation. But it's also about, we're starting now. Here's the first step. And so let's take a deep breath and realize that you've made a great step by starting this conversation and wanting to do something differently.
Yeah, the paradox of that for me is that people who have accumulated wealth and people who have not accumulated wealth both apologize.
Yes. Isn't that interesting?
That really is interesting. So why are we as Christians apologizing either for having wealth and accumulated it or not having it?
Well, the ones who have accumulated it, I guess, are assuming that I will judge them for having so much, is really the view. And I don't know over the years what they have given, and what those other choices have been. And that's not for me to know, but it's almost money is just one of those really difficult topics, and it's uncomfortable. And so people who have accumulated say, I'm sorry, almost as if they should be ashamed of that. And there's no reason. And God gives us all different resources, and it's really about what we do with them. We all have different income levels. We have different family structures and dynamics and things that get us to where we are now. And so that's really how I try to level set with everyone. Understand where you've been, but also these are your God-given resources and your decisions of how you're going to be the best steward of those.
I love that. I love that. These are your God-given resources. Maybe that's part of the problem and why we apologize so much. We don't see them as God-given resources. We think either if we've accumulated wealth, we've done something that we shouldn't have done that allowed us to accumulate the wealth, right? It's almost like money itself is tainted, right? And which is just a totally foreign notion to me, because if it's all given by God, I mean, my role is to be the best steward I can be of what God gives me, correct? Whether it's time, money, or talent.
Absolutely.
So how do you help people transition from apologizing? Because it sounds like everybody you sit down with apologizes. I'm sorry I don't have any money, or I'm sorry I've got a lot of money. So there's a level playing field there. You know what people are going to say. They're going to apologize right off the bat, right? So how do you move people from apologetic to faithful stewards?
Yeah, a lot of it is just having that level set conversation and sharing with them, I'm not here to judge where you are now, where you've been. I'm here to help you get where you want to go.
Okay.
And we talk in my company a lot about, it's called a 5S journey, but we talk about struggling and kind of those, a lot of us think of those as the early years, we're not making as much and just getting started in our careers. Progressing through that, are we barely surviving? Are we struggling? Do we move to a point of stable? And then, eventually to a place of surplus. And so I'll show people that continuum and ask, where are you now? And they'll ask me, what's the definition of those words? And I said, it's really about what it means to you. What someone might consider that they're struggling, whereas I might think they're in a great place if we're just talking about the pure numbers of it. And so it's really how they perceive their situation.
You're very client focused, aren't you?
Absolutely.
How'd you get to be that way?
I don't know that I can answer that question.
Yeah, well, obviously you have a very healthy attitude towards money. You see it as a God-given resource.
I do.
You help Christians be wise about their money and their stewardship of it. At least that's the way I think about it, stewardship, right? And
that's the real answer to the question. I spent so much time in my church in that arena that it spilled over so much into my professional life.
Okay. Well, tell me about your church experience that helped you have what sounds like a biblically focused notion about stewardship.
It was 12, maybe 13 years ago now that I first took Crown Financial class.
Larry Burkett.
Yes. Great class.
Yep.
And I loved the principles, loved that it wasn't just the tactical, the how-to, but really that biblical view of why am I making these choices? Give that framework of what is God calling me to do? And so my husband and I went through that class. I ended up teaching it several times after that because I just loved it and wanted to share that with others. That then led to joining the stewardship committee and helping to raise the annual budget.
Sweet.
And then chairing the committee. So
wow.
Natural progression of things there. And so people are accustomed to hearing me talk about money from a biblical standpoint. So when I do it at work, that's a very natural fit.
That's beautiful. You want to give a shout out for your church?
Rosley United Methodist Church.
There you go. Okay. All right. And who's your pastor?
Dr. Michael Long, he is fabulous. He is actually leaving us next month and taking a district superintendent role. So
okay.
It's changed for him. Yeah, he's been with us for 16 years and it's been fabulous.
Oh, wow. I love hearing people brag about their pastors. That's marvelous. Because I've heard enough of the other, so it's great to hear people brag about their pastor. So your church discipled you in a biblical understanding of stewardship. in general, and then money specifically. Were you in this line of business as a financial advisor when you took Crown?
My entire career has been in financial services, but
Okay.
flavor. So I started more with an accounting background and then financial analysis.
Mm-hmm.
Money's always been of interest to me, so really getting the biblical perspective on it was helpful to set up, my life at the time. My husband and I were married, but we didn't have kids yet. And so really before we got into a lot of those major decisions, it was just the perfect time to get on the same page with each other and with God.
Not necessarily in that order, right? Yeah. Wow. When you get that right, the rest of it's really easy, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it really is. So how does your faith impact, and I think you've answered that question, but how does your faith impact what you do? And I'm particularly interested in, you have niched yourself as a business person into working with Christians.
Yes.
So how did you come about that niche for your business?
Well, it really has to do with the company that I work for, and I know we're not going to share company names, but we are a tax-exempt organization, and so we have a legal requirement that we have some sort of definition around that. We're a 501c8 organization, and we're tax-exempt because we only work with Christians.
Wow, that's really interesting. So you were attracted to this company because they work with Christians?
I would not do this anywhere else.
Wow. Now, why is that?
Because of the generosity components of it, and again, that's company specific. But we really do, it's not just that we talk about generosity, we have ways to help people live that out. When they say, I really want to make a difference in my community, when they engage with us financially, we provide ways for them to do that.
Oh, wow. How do you do that?
It's through tax-exempt dollars, and we turn those dollars back over to the members and say, go do an action team, create that community service project, and we're here to support you, and we'll, provide $250 for that, whatever that project looks like to them.
Oh, wow. That is really attractive to me. I like that notion. Okay, we can't name the company because lawyers have taken over the world, right? But if you're on LinkedIn, go find Jennifer Yankowsky, and then you'll see the name of the company, right?
Yeah.
Right. We can't say it, but LinkedIn, you can on LinkedIn. So that's a beautiful thing.
Well, and to further answer your question too, Dr. Joey, working with Christians gives me the opportunity to talk about giving back. Advisors just talk about accumulation, and it's all about, there was a commercial a few years back, what's your number? And so everybody feels like there's, just supposed to be this one number that satisfies all their goals, and their whole life will be meaningful if they get to that.
Would that it were that easy, right?
Exactly. And so for me, it's really about helping people to assess where they are and understand what is that journey. So the goals aren't just what's your retirement number. The goal may be, you said you want to give more. So let's look at where your giving is now. Is it at 3% and you're trying to move to 5%? Okay, well, what does that mean? And so we'll talk about cash flow and expenses. And again, not that I'm there to judge, but I'm really just holding up a mirror to them and asking, do these numbers reflect your values?
Do these numbers reflect your values? I love that, because that prompts me as a Christian business person to define my values, right?
Yes. And what are my priorities, and do these numbers show that? Am I comfortable with the picture that's painting?
Jennifer, to piggyback on what you're saying in terms of the importance of defining your core values and making sure that your giving reflects that. One of the things we did when we started this company that owns Faith Positive and our corporate side, Work Positive, is that we determined that we would tithe out of the gross for our company. And the reason I did that is because my friend Jim Palmer, who's a business coach, dream business coach, we were having this conversation one day, and he said that he was in a conversation with someone about how much to tithe. And so, 10% is the tithe. Okay, we all agreed on that. That's the biblical definition of tithe. But then he said, so then somebody asked the question, well, do I tithe on the net or the gross?
Right.
And the response back was, well, it depends on how much you want God to bless you.
Absolutely.
When you start parsing what I think are hairs, of course, it's funny for me to say that, right? When you start parsing hairs around that, it just sort of loses the importance of the conversation. But the main core value for us was to make sure we as a company tithe off of our gross, and then our relationships with people like Perry and others require that they tithe 5% out of their gross, and that we then tithe 5% out of revenue from that particular region into their region to do ministry projects and things like that their people choose. And so then we also individually tithe as well. So I mean, can you really outgive God at the end of the day?
No. He is such a good God and so generous that we can never even come close.
Exactly. I mean, you got to be wise, and that's what you help Christians do, because as Zig Ziglar said, money's like oxygen. It's pretty much high up there on the gotta have list, right? But how much can you give that is in fulfillment of your core values? So that's what I hear you saying. I love that. How do you get people talk? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say it's also about how we look at the whole 100%. So I mentioned a specific giving goal, and sometimes people come in with that. But it's really looking at how are we stewards of all of it. Financial matters are spiritual matters. How we handle money impacts our relationship with God. So not just the piece that we give, but what are we doing with the other 90 as well? Right.
And how we give also impacts it, because God loves a what kind of giver?
Cheerful.
That's right. So, I mean, if you're begrudgingly writing a check, I got to give God this money. I'm not so sure God can bless that as much as he does when you cheerfully do it. Man, God gave me this money. I get to help other people with it. Here are the ways I think God's helping me to give. So what are some of the challenges that you face in getting people to define their values and maybe even shift those values to a more biblical approach?
Some of it is just an honest assessment of where they are, but also kind of evaluating what is truly important to them and putting it in that context. Sometimes we'll go through these discussions, and as I mentioned, the expense review, and they realize it's just that internal reflection of, I don't know that I like what that says. Or sometimes they've just never put pen to paper and actually done that. And so it's an education for them.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that there's, other than your amazing church, the Roswell United Methodist Church, there are two shout outs for it, right? Your amazing church. How many places do we go where we as Christians do that kind of hard work of self-definition of what's important to me, what burdens, what passions has God given to me for certain people groups and things like that, and how can I be involved, not just in stroking a check, but also in the gift of my time.
Right. And some of what we discussed too, when it talks about the goals and dreams, is I'll ask, if money were no object, what would you do? And and sometimes people realize, let's quit the job I'm in because I hate it, and that's always hard to hear. For some people that is a reality. Or sometimes it's a conversation around, could you do similar work in a better environment? If you still need that. Or it's about getting to financial independence, not retirement as in I'm going to sit on a rocking chair on my deck for the rest of my life, But, when we talk about retirement, it's also about what are you retiring to? And so then have a chance to dream, I could be at my church 3 days a week volunteering. That's how you really get to that dream stage of learning also what's important to them. I want to retire from this type of work in order to go on a mission trip once a year or whatever the things are. And when you really put it in that goal context, it gives them the motivation to change where they are now, because they'll decide some of these things I'm spending money on aren't so important. If it means that later I could do this other thing.
Oh, wow. You said so much right there. That was beautiful. You just said so much, and my I'd say my hair is on fire, but that's already happened, obviously. So retirement's not in the Bible.
Correct.
Yeah. So what we're really working for is to buy ourselves more discretionary time.
Yes.
To do what we love with those we love, and to follow God's call on our lives, right?
Yes.
Yeah. See, that's a beautiful thing.
Christians have some sort of ministry that's important to them, and that's always part of that initial conversation too. What speaks to you? And for some people it's children, and for some it's animals, and for some it's homelessness. all Christians have that thing that tugs at their heartstrings, and they say, I know that's what God's calling me to do.
Mm.
And then it's about using their time and their financial resources, both now and in the future. How do we help you achieve those things where God has put you into his plan for a specific purpose?
Yeah, and how does money then become a tool to enable you to follow God's calling on your life?
Exactly. Money is a tool, not a goal.
Yes, and so you're buying yourself time, that discretionary time to be able to do that. The other thing you talked about was how many people are dissatisfied at work today.
Yeah.
And those numbers are staggering. And Jennifer, they're not a lot different for Christians either. That's part of the sadness that we see in Faith Positive Nation.
Mm-hmm.
We spend 70% of our waking hours at work.
Right.
And every survey I've ever seen of American workers, the Likert response from very satisfied to very dissatisfied, 2/3 to 3/4 choose dissatisfied to very dissatisfied. Environment makes a huge difference, as you just noticed. So rather than personalizing it and saying, I must not be good or whatever, a lot of times the environment's just toxic and filled with what we talk about as Eeyore vampires. These negative people who constantly circling you and just sucking the life out of you, right?
Yes.
And sucking the joy and, the spiritual benefit of work, because work is to be worshiped. So I love the way you couch that in terms of maybe, you're coming to help them be wise about their money, but you're helping them look at their other resource, which is their time and talent.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And really using that in a way to free up their financial resources as well. Mm. What I hear from people so often is, well, I have to do this job, or I have to work. And it's because they have tied themselves to all of these obligations. They are burdened by debt.
Yes.
Whether it's old debt, whether it's new debt, however they got there. And that's why I love Proverbs 22:7. I mean, we are told that the borrower is slave to the lender. And so I'm able to put that in context for them. And when they look at where they are, they really start to understand, yeah, I feel like I have to stay in this job because we bought more house than we could really afford. And that's, again, part of that self-reflection. What are the choices I've made, and could I make different ones at this point? I had a conversation just a few weeks ago with a couple who feels like, we're in a good place now and we make decent money, but we've got all of this debt from previous years of bad choices, and we want to change that, but we just feel like we are so burdened by all of this that we bring into it and all these years of bad choices, and how do we get ourselves out of it? And I said, okay, well, the first thing is stop with the guilt.
They're apologizing again, right?
And also, you could just tell they were discouraged. And that was sad to me. That was really disheartening. And what I share with them is Jesus freed us on the cross for more than this. And if he has freed us, then we need to unburden ourselves from the things of this world that are financial. So let's talk about how to move forward and make different choices going forward.
Yeah, so it's not I owe, so off to work I go.
Right.
Yeah, when we do workshops and things like that around the Faith Positive 5 core practices, we get to the Believe core practice, and my favorite question right there is, why do you work? And the looks I get back and the laughter that comes back is like, you idiot, I work because I have to pay bills.
Yeah.
Really? Okay. How's that getting you out of bed in the morning? And it speaks to the very thing you're talking about, the choices we've made in the past saddle us with certain amounts of debt, which obligate us to do certain things that we don't want to do. So it limits our range of options. The debt overwhelms me. And so I'm out of that sweet spot where God called me to be in terms of my core values, my priorities, and my unique contribution to make to the world, right?
You're exactly right.
Yeah. Somebody's going to want to reach out to you, Jennifer Yankowsky, and they're going to want to have a conversation with you because they're a Christian and they want to be wiser about their money. Is there an email address we can email you?
Absolutely. Let's go with the personal email address.
Okay. Yeah, that way we don't have to say the company name, right? Okay.
It's jyankowski@gmail.com, and I'll spell that.
That's okay. We're going to put it in the episode copy because somebody's on an elliptical right now, and I don't want them breaking their front teeth out trying to write this down. So it's Jennifer Yankowski@gmail.com. Jyankowski@gmail.com. See, everybody listening just corrected me. So they're really listening. They're into this. Yankowsky@gmail.com. That's in the episode copy, so you can email her there. Faith Positive Nation always wants to know, Jennifer, from our guests, about a favorite Bible passage or Bible verse that really guides your life. So what's yours?
There are many, as you would imagine, but
I get that a lot. I really do.
Yes. God put a lot of good stuff in that Bible.
It really is. It's like choosing between your children, right? Which one's my favorite? No, it depends on what day it is, right?
Well, today we're going to go with the NIV version of Romans 8:28, which we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who've been called according to his purpose. And why that speaks to me so much is it's all about God. It's for God's good, and we know that he loves us and wants good for us, but it's still all in line with his purpose. So many times we ask, what is my purpose? What am I doing here? And the focus is so much on I and not on what is his purpose and who are we here to serve. Wow.
Yes, that is so true. The first commandment rather, thou shalt have no other gods before me. You know, our favorite sin is to replace God with ourselves. So I love the way you explained that, Romans 8:28. Yeah, it's really all about God. And by the way, the money we get to play with while we're here, yes, we work to earn it. And our work is first and primarily worship, and then it earns money, right? But it's given to us by God. We just get to play with it for a little while.
Yeah, along with our very lives. All of our talents, it all comes from him.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. Jennifer Yankowsky is a financial advisor who helps us Christians be wise with our money. Her email address is jyankowski@gmail.com. It's in the episode copy there in blue, so all you got to do is click it, and you can be emailing her and having a conversation with her. I absolutely love your biblical perspective on stewardship and your biblical understanding of money. I've learned a lot from you today. I'm sure Faith Positive Nation has as well. So I just want to pray God's blessings on you, your amazing husband, your family, and all that your work and all the many people that it touches. Thank you so much for the gift of your time today, Jennifer.
Thank you, Dr. Joey. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks for listening to Faith Positive Radio, the Christian business coaching conversation that increases your faith with greater joy at work so you love God and others more. Suggest guests and ask questions when you email Dr. Joey at info@getpositive.today. And be sure to get your free gift of the 5 positive business conversations to have today coaching program at getpositive.today. Until next time, may God bless you with everything your heart can hope for and more than your mind can imagine.